Eat, Lucky said, pushing the plate of linguine across the table. May 8, 1946. Barbetta Restaurant, Manhattan. The restaurant was packed, but everyone knew what was happening at table 9. The man sitting across from Lucky was shaking so bad he could barely hold his fork. He was the one who told the commission that Lucky was finished, who'd taken over Lucky's operations, who'd gotten rich while Lucky rotted in Dannemora prison. I said, "Eat," Lucky repeated, and this time his hand moved to his jacket pocket. "Because this is your last meal." Mikey Suits, Romano had been running Lucky's organization like he owned it for 9 years. Every Thursday night he held court at Barbetta on West 46th Street, the finest Italian restaurant in Manhattan. Mikey sat at table 9 in the corner, surrounded by his crew, drinking Barolo and eating the best pasta in New York. He wore custom suits that cost $800, drove a Cadillac 60 Special, had a townhouse on the Upper East Side. He had 20 made men reporting to him, 3 illegal casinos running across Manhattan, and the commission's blessing to operate as long as he paid his tribute. Mikey had built all of this on the foundation Lucky Luciano left behind. The connections, the structure, the respect. He'd taken everything Lucky created and claimed it as his own. And for 9 years, while Lucky was locked in Dannemora Correctional Facility, Mikey had slept peacefully, until May 6, 1946. That was the day Lucky Luciano walked out of prison. The government had commuted his sentence in exchange for his help during World War II. Lucky's connections with the Italian docs had helped the war effort, but there was a condition: immediate deportation to Italy. Lucky had 1 week before the ship sailed, 1 week to settle his affairs in New York, 1 week to handle unfinished business, and Mikey Suits Romano was at the top of that list. Lucky didn't go home when he arrived in New York, didn't rest after 9 years in prison. He went straight to Frank Costello's penthouse on Central Park West. Frank was waiting. He'd been running the Luciano family in Lucky's absence, but everyone knew he was just keeping the seat warm. "Give me names," Lucky said, not even sitting down. Frank had a list ready. He'd spent 9 years watching, listening, keeping track. He rattled off 12 names, men who'd gotten rich while Lucky was locked away, men who'd carved up his territory like he was never coming back. But one name made Lucky's jaw tighten: Michael Romano. Mikey had been Lucky's protege, a sharp young soldier from the Lower East Side that Lucky had sponsored in 1935. Lucky taught him the business, showed him how to run gambling operations, introduced him to the commission, protected him when he made mistakes. When Lucky got arrested in 1936 for running a prostitution ring, he trusted Mikey to hold things together, take care of the organization, make sure the money kept flowing. For 2 years, Mikey did exactly that. Sent money to Lucky's lawyers, visited him in prison, kept things running. Then the visits stopped. The money stopped. And according to Frank Costello, Mikey had made a move. He'd told the commission that Lucky was finished, that 9 years in prison meant Lucky was out of touch, out of date, that the organization needed younger leadership. The commission, eager to avoid a power vacuum, had agreed. Mikey took over Lucky's operations, and in exchange for their blessing, Mikey paid them a larger tribute than Lucky ever had. Lucky had spent 9 years in prison thinking about that betrayal. 9 years planning what came next. "Where does he eat?" Lucky asked Frank. "Barbetta," Frank said. "Every Thursday night, table 9, shows up at 8 o'clock like clockwork." Lucky looked at his watch. It was Thursday, 6 p.m. Get me a table right next to his. At 7:45 p.m., Barbetta was filling up. The Thursday night crowd was arriving. Mobsters, politicians, businessmen, the kind of people who made deals over pasta and wine. Lucky Luciano walked in at 7:50 p.m. He was wearing the same suit he'd worn in court 9 years ago, a navy blue pinstripe that no longer fit quite right. Prison had changed him, made him thinner, harder. Gray was starting to show in his hair. He looked like a ghost, like something from New York's past walking into its present. The restaurant didn't go silent, but conversations shifted. Eyes tracked him as he moved through the crowd. Old-timers recognized him immediately. Younger mobsters who'd only heard the stories whispered to each other. "That's Lucky Luciano. I thought he was in prison. Man got out 2 days ago. Government's deporting him to Italy." Lucky walked straight to table 8, right next to table 9. Frank Costello was already sitting there along with Meyer Lansky and Albert Anastasia, 3 of Lucky's most loyal men. 3 men who'd never forgotten who the real boss was. Lucky sat down with his back to the wall facing the entrance. Old habit. Never sit with your back to the door. At exactly 8 p.m., Mikey Suits. Romano walked in. Mikey was 34 now, dressed in a charcoal gray suit with a lavender tie, diamond cufflinks, gold Rolex. He had 4 men with him, bodyguards who looked like they'd never missed a meal. Mikey was laughing about something, gesturing expansively, acting like he owned the place. He did own the place, or at least he owned the protection that kept Barbetta operating without police interference. Mikey's crew headed for table 9. That's when Mikey saw Lucky. He stopped mid-step, the blood drained from his face. His bodyguards noticed the change and followed his gaze. When they saw Lucky Luciano sitting there, calm as Sunday morning, their hands moved toward their waistbands. Lucky didn't move, didn't react, just looked at Mikey with those cold, calculating eyes that had once run all of New York. "Michael," Lucky said quietly. His voice carried across the restaurant. "Come sit with me." It wasn't a request. Mikey's bodyguards tensed. One of them, a thick-necked soldier named Paulie, stepped forward. "Mr. Romano doesn't take meetings without Albert." Anastasia stood up. He was the Lord High Executioner, the man who'd killed more people than anyone could count. He didn't say a word, just stood there, and that was enough. Suddenly, guns were everywhere. Mikey's 4 bodyguards had their hands inside their jackets. Anastasia had his hand on his piece. Frank Costello had produced a revolver. Meyer Lansky, who rarely carried, had a pistol pointed at Paulie's chest. The restaurant froze. Forks stopped mid-bite. Wine glasses paused at lips. Everyone understood what was happening. But Lucky Luciano didn't even blink. "Tell your boys to go home, Michael," Lucky said. "This conversation is between you and me." Mikey's mouth opened and closed like a fish. His hands were shaking. He looked at his bodyguards, looked at the guns, looked at Lucky's calm, terrifying face. "Go," Mikey whispered to his crew. "Boss," Paulie started. "I said go." The bodyguards backed toward the door, hands still on their weapons, eyes locked on Anastasia. They didn't want to leave, but they also didn't want to die in Barbetta on a Thursday night. When they were gone, Lucky gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." Michael Romano sat. Lucky signaled a waiter. The young man approached nervously, avoiding eye contact. "Bring us linguine alla vongole, the good one, and 2 glasses of Barolo." The waiter practically ran to the kitchen. The restaurant was dead silent now, 80 people frozen in place, watching table 8 like it was a stage. Even the kitchen staff had stopped cooking. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew this was history. The food arrived. The waiter set down 2 plates of linguine with clams, still steaming, 2 glasses of red wine. Then he disappeared. Lucky pushed 1 plate toward Mikey. "Eat," he said. Mikey stared at the pasta like it was poisoned. "I'm not hungry, Lucky. Listen, I can explain." "Eat," Lucky repeated, "because this is your last meal." That's when Mikey understood. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a conversation. This was an execution with an audience. "Lucky, please." Mikey's voice cracked. "I had to survive." You were gone. The commission was taking everything. I made a deal to save the organization. You made a deal to save yourself. Lucky said quietly. You told them I was finished. You took my operations. You kept the money that should have gone to my lawyers. You got rich while I was in prison. Tears were forming in Mikey's eyes. I was gonna make it right. I swear. I was waiting for you to come home. I've been home for 2 days, Michael. You didn't come see me. Didn't send word. Didn't send money to make up for 9 years of nothing. Lucky leaned forward. You thought I was never coming back. Thought you'd gotten away with it. Please, Lucky. I'll give it all back. The operations, the money, everything. I don't want it back from you, Lucky said. I'm taking it back from you. There's a difference. Lucky's hand moved to his jacket pocket. But Lucky didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a straight razor. The same razor he'd carried since the 1920s. The same one he'd used during the Castellammarise War. The same blade that had convinced Joe Masseria's men to stand down. Lucky unfolded the razor slowly. The steel caught the light. You know what the Romans did to traitors? Lucky asked, conversationally. They made them eat their last meal, then they executed them in public. Let everyone see what happens when you betray your emperor. Mikey was hyperventilating now, eyes locked on the razor. I'm not a Roman emperor, Lucky continued, but I am the chairman of the board, and everyone in this restaurant needs to understand something. He raised his voice so every person in Barbetta could hear. When I went to prison, some of you forgot who built this, forgot whose organization this is, forgot that respect isn't something you take, it's something you earn. He looked directly at Mikey. Michael Romano forgot. So now Michael Romano is going to help me remind everyone. Lucky stood up. Mikey tried to bolt, but Anastasia was behind him in a second, hand on his shoulder like a vice. Stand up, Lucky ordered. Mikey stood, legs shaking so badly he could barely support himself. Lucky walked around the table until he was face to face with the man who'd betrayed him. Then, with the entire restaurant watching, Lucky raised the razor to Mikey's throat. Not to kill, to mark. In one quick motion, Lucky cut a thin line across Mikey's left cheek. Not deep, just enough to scar, just enough to make sure every person in the Mafia would know Michael Romano as the man who betrayed Lucky Luciano. Mikey screamed. Blood ran down his face, staining his $800 suit. That's so you remember, Lucky said quietly. Every time you look in a mirror, you'll see that scar, and every person who sees you will know what you did. Lucky folded the razor and put it back in his pocket. You've got 24 hours to leave New York, Lucky said. Take whatever you can carry, leave the rest. If I see you in this city after tomorrow night, I won't be this generous. He turned to address the entire restaurant. The rest of you, Lucky Luciano is back. The rules are the same as they always were. Honor, loyalty, respect. Anyone who forgot those rules while I was gone, you've got one chance to remember. After that, there won't be a second chance. Lucky Luciano walked out of Barbetta at 8:47 p.m. on May 8, 1946. He left Michael Romano bleeding at table 9, left 80 witnesses who would spread the story across New York by morning. By sunrise, every mobster from Boston to Chicago knew the chairman was back. Mikey Suits. Romano was on a train to Miami by noon. He never returned to New York. That scar was his brand, a permanent reminder of what happens when you betray the boss. Within 48 hours, every operation Mikey had taken was back under Lucky's control. The casinos, the gambling, the racket, everything. The commission, who'd blessed Mikey's takeover, sent representatives to make peace. They met with Lucky at the Waldorf Astoria. We made a mistake, they said. We thought you weren't coming back. Lucky looked at them with those cold eyes. I'm leaving in 3 days. The government's shipping me to Italy. But before I go, understand this. I built the commission. I created the structure that keeps peace in this business. And that structure stays in place, whether I'm here or in Sicily. He pointed at Frank Costello. Frank runs my family. You respect him like you respect me. Understood? They understood. Lucky Luciano sailed to Italy on May 11, 1946. He would never return to American soil, but the deal he enforced at Barbados held for the next 16 years. Frank Costello ran the Luciano family. The commission maintained peace, and nobody ever questioned Lucky's authority again, even from exile. The story of Mikey's betrayal became legend. Old-timers still tell it, about how Lucky came back from 9 years in prison, walked into a restaurant, and with one razor and 80 witnesses, reminded everyone who really ran New York. You can lock a man up for 9 years. You can steal his organization. You can tell people he's finished. But you can't take his throne, not if he's a real boss. Lucky Luciano proved something that night. Power isn't about who's physically present. It's about who commands respect. And respect isn't given. It's earned through loyalty, intelligence, and the will to enforce your authority when challenged. Michael Romano died in Miami in 1959. Heart attack. The scar was still visible in his obituary photo. Lucky Luciano died in Italy in 1162, but his legacy lived on through the structure he created. The Commission, which still governs organized crime today, and it all came back to that night at Table 9. The night Lucky proved that betrayal has consequences. The night the chairman reminded everyone, you can't replace a legend, you can only serve him. If this story about loyalty, power, and street justice moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you understand that real bosses don't need to be present to command respect. Comment below, what would you have done in Lucky's position? Turn on notifications because next week we're revealing how Lucky Luciano created the Commission and changed organized crime forever. Remember, in the Mafia, respect is eternal, and Lucky Luciano earned his for life.